Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Year 11 Success Evening. I'm Mrs. Gill, Executive Head Teacher here at Cumbrian High School, having joined just recently in January. Firstly, can I say how lovely it is to be speaking to you all directly, albeit in a virtual capacity. I had hoped that we would be able to hold this event face to face, but unfortunately, due to the increase in COVID cases, as you'll no doubt be aware, we've made this decision to hold a webinar instead. During this event this evening, you're going to hear presentations from a number of key staff, including Mr. Lewis, Assistant Head Teacher, Pupil Achievement and Standards, Mrs. Cunnington, Head of English, Mr. Tippings, Head of Maths, who has joined us just recently to the school, Miss Lloyd, Head of Science, and finally Mr. Chapman, Head of Year 11. Over the course of the session, we're going to provide you with hopefully a wealth of valuable information that will give you an idea of how you can support your child over the forthcoming year. If you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat function. You'll see a chat bubble in the screen above you. If you pop your question in there, we won't answer it immediately, but we will email a response to you after the event tonight. After this event, this presentation is being recorded and we'll ensure that it's on the school website so you can refer back to it at a later date. I don't think I need to tell you the significance of the year ahead as your child finishes their GCSE or equivalent qualifications. And without a doubt, COVID-19 has caused a significant disruption to their learning over the last year, and in many cases, and hasn't had an impact on their well-being, and we recognise that. I made the decision when I arrived at the school in January that your children, or the majority of them, would sit their GCSE in English literature and numeracy at the end of year 10. I made that decision because I knew that there was going to be disruption to the learning over the year due to the coronavirus. And what I wanted to do was ensure that qualifications were banked at the end of year 10 to alleviate some of the pressure as your child moves through into year 11. They will have less exams to sit. It is the intention at the moment that your child will sit the remainder of their exams at the end of this academic year, following a revised exam specification. And my colleagues in a moment will talk in more detail about that. However, in relation to COVID, the future is still uncertain. We are seeing disruption already to learning as children and staff are contracting the coronavirus, and therefore it's important that we do prepare for future disruption. As you may know, the last two cohorts of Year 11 pupils didn't actually sit exams. Instead, they sat school-based assessments. Most recently, it was called Centre Determined Grades. Now, we don't know at this moment in time what lies ahead for your child. We anticipate and hope they will sit exams at the end of the year, but we're also gathering as much evidence as possible over the forthcoming year to be able to support either with that future exam or, if necessary, any assessment process that may be in place. And we can only do this if your child attends school on time every day. It's more important now than ever before that your child is prepared for life beyond school. And the best way that we can do that is ensuring that they've got the best grades possible in the courses that they sit. We've got high expectations of your child and high aspirations for the future. We want them to exceed and we want them to achieve the potential. And I think as parents and teachers, the best thing that we can do for your child is to give them and equip them with the skills for life, ensuring that they've got a range of qualifications, including their maths and English, to ensure that they're able to compete effectively in the future job market and able to ensure that they realise their own ambitions. As a school, we are on a journey of rapid improvement, and we're going to go to any length to ensure that your child achieves the standard of education over the next year that you would expect and get those all important qualifications that they need for their future. I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Lewis, Assistant Head Teacher, Pupil Achievement and Standards, who's going to give the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gill. If you just bear with me a minute, I'll get the presentation up that we'll be using for the rest of the meeting. Let me see, John. Right. Thank you very much. So I'll go through the relevant points. First question, really, I know Mrs. Gill's already talked about, are there exams this year? As far as we know, yes, we're planning full steam ahead for exams both in January and in June, May and June. In order to ensure that the pupils are prepared for the exams, we need vigorous, regular assessments. And the important point of that is we need pupils, parents and staff to be able to know exactly where the pupils are in terms of their progress. We need to know what topics they understand and what topics they don't understand. And then it's my responsibility to ensure that the pupils who have weaknesses in certain areas of studies are then supported to improve via interventions. It's also important that the pupils themselves understand what they can do and what they can't do, and then ask for help in areas where they are struggling. We do need the assessments that mirror exam conditions. The pupils have not been doing exams over the last couple of years due to COVID. It's important that the pupils are thrust back into exams, that they actually get experience in exam conditions. I'm sure all the parents here tonight still remember the exam hall. It's important that the pupils get to experience those conditions before they actually sit their actual exams. And as Mrs. Gill said, if we do go to a CDG type approach where we have to actually generate the grades for the pupils instead of the exam hall, then we need to make sure we're as fair as possible, comprehensive as possible, by having as much data as possible. We were also mini-assessed in most lessons. I'll mention why I'm saying that in a minute. So in order to do that, we're going to have assessment periods. The first one is going to be October the 5th to the 15th, and those assessments will take place in class. We will then have a second assessment period, which is the end of November, start of December, and then we'll have mocks in the hall, so they will be the full exam experience. Assessment 3 period again is the end of January, start of February. They again will be in class. And then you've got assessment 4, end of March, start of April, again in the hall, which is the final preparation really for the revision we'll do leading up to the exams in the summer. So if I can give you some general advice for success, Mrs. Gill's already said it. Advice number 1, attend all lessons, absolutely paramount. If you can't come to school, do that. If you do miss lessons for whatever reason, then we're going to be using Google Classrooms a lot. The work is already starting to go on Google Classrooms, and Google Classrooms are going to be mentioned a lot by everybody tonight. Really important. Be on time. Lessons do start at 8:35. Okay. All pupils need to be there. We had too many year 11 pupils rocking in way after 11:35. They need to be there on time, otherwise they're disrupting the learning of themselves and others. Another key one, too many pupils give up too easily. Please have a go at every single classroom activity. We know what we're doing. Have a go, and if you still can't do it, please ask for help. Don't let mistakes put you off. It's part of the process. Revise for the assessments, really important. We know there's going to be assessment periods being carried out. It's really important that the pupils prepare for them, because if they don't, we don't actually know whether they understand the work or not. All we know is they haven't done any revision. We need to understand we need to know whether they understand the work. Resources are going to be on Google Classrooms for revision purposes, and the work on the weaknesses is then going to, so then pupils are supposed to work on their weaknesses identified in the assessments. If a pupil gets a C grade, a B grade, an A grade, what they then need to do is work out the questions that they didn't understand and work on those. That way they'll really progress. Talk to us. We're part of the team. It's parents, teachers and pupils working together, and try to relax and enjoy the journey. Now, assessment information. Most subjects will have a written exam in the dates that I mentioned as practice. If they've got a written assessment, they'll have that. Assessments will be based on past papers produced by the exam board, which is the WGAC in most subjects. As I said, assessments will take place under exam conditions. The pupils need to be prepared. And this is the important message all the way through the presentation tonight. Pre-exam resources will be posted on Google Classroom for revision. Pupils need to prepare. Text will be sent out to remind parents and pupils of upcoming exams. The results of these assessments will be sent home so everybody knows exactly where the pupils are. These assessment grades will be used to make predictions. So, just for me to finish off, actions for pupils. Know when you have the assessments, plan a revision schedule, use the resources at home, find a quiet place to study, try your best in assessments to develop exam stamina. What I mean by that is most assessments will be up to an hour long. You need to be able to work for an hour at a time. You should be able to do that because lessons are an hour at a time. So practice that. Once you get your assessments back, be clear and honest about what you can do and what you can't do. Focus on your weaknesses, don't forget your strengths, and believe in yourself. That's the big one from me. I'm now going to pass over to Mrs. Cunnington, that's going to focus on the English component. Thank you very much.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mrs. Cunnington. And I'm here to talk you through the GCSE English Language qualification, which is the qualification completed by our students this year in Year 11. Before I continue, I think it's really important for me to acknowledge and just to congratulate our students. They worked incredibly hard last year in Year 10 to complete the full GCSE English Literature qualification, and we achieved some excellent results. We were really impressed. We are now just going to build on that, and we are going to focus on the GCSE English Language qualification. GCSE English Literature, a really relevant qualification acknowledged by colleges, but GCSE English Language is definitely one that some look for. So it's really important, even if your child has achieved their target grade or even exceeded it in literature, that they really do give that full effort to this qualification this year. I'm just going to go through the components just to let you know what it is that your child will be completing. To begin with, the qualification is split into 3 units. Now, what's really nice for us to discuss is that part of that qualification has already been completed. So there's only one element that is coursework based. We call it controlled assessment now, worth 20% of the qualification, and that's oracy. So your child will have completed that in the summer of Year 10. It's a 5-minute presentation, a speech they would have written and then recorded. Now, there are a few students, you might think your child, I'm not sure if they have completed that. Don't worry, we are formally assessing and moderating those submissions, and we will inform you this autumn term of your child's grade in that 20% of the course. If your child wasn't here in the summer term of Year 10, again, don't worry, there will be opportunities to sit that part of the qualification, and also resit opportunities if we feel, or your child feels, that they would like to reattempt and attempt a higher grade in that. Rest of the qualification, 80%, is all externally assessed. So 2 exams that make up the rest of that. What's really important for me to highlight to you is that there are no tiers for GCSE English Language. The papers are targeted for A star to G. So your child, no matter what set they are in, they are going to be pushed to achieve the very, very best grade for them, and they will not be restricted at all by the tier of entry. 2 exams. The first one is the 18th of May. Your child has this and the other unit and all the information at the front of their books. It was the first thing that we did when we returned in September, just to make sure that all of our learners were really clear about what it is that we were working towards. The 2 exams are equally weighted in terms of reading and writing skills. And you'll see here that the first exam, they're assessed on 2 types of writing: description, so creative, and then exposition, which is essay writing, alongside a range of different reading style questions, all of which will be covered in lessons and familiar to our students before that exam. The second exam, and it's quite nice actually this year in terms of the plans for the exams, we have a little bit of time in between each of the units. So Unit 3 is scheduled for the 10th of June, again worth 40%, equally rated reading and writing. And this time they're assessed on their ability to argue and persuade. And you'll notice there that there's different types of writing formats, non-fiction, so anything from a letter to an article can come up in that exam. What's really important to note is that the WJC acknowledged the impact of the pandemic, and they scaled back this exam. It used to be 2 hours, it's now 1 hour and a half, and only 1 piece of writing comes up on that paper. We don't know what will come up, but all I can tell you is that our students will be ready for anything that is thrown their way. So what are we going to cover in class? Well, all of the exam skills that they will need, covering all of those reading styles, writing formats. But I think what's really important to note is that we are going back to basics. 50% of each of the writing elements in the exams is for spelling, punctuation, grammar, and sentence structures. So we are going back to some of those basics that some of our students maybe might forget. So punctuation lessons, spelling tests will be something that your child may come home and say that they are doing regularly. You'll notice I've also mentioned there that there will be opportunities to reset that RSE element, which is worth 20%. In terms of helping your child and maybe some important resources, in both of those exams, they will experience 5 to 6 different texts. You'll see a couple of examples on your screen. Some of them are short infographics, some of them are quite detailed texts, and we provide highlighters on the day, but actually it's really useful for your child to have a selection of those because they may need to revisit a text for a different type of question. So I would encourage you to purchase some extra highlighters for your child for those exam days. We will provide lots of revision materials. I'm sure that we will talk very soon about extra revision sessions should your child need it. But on Google Classroom in the next coming weeks, you'll be informed of when these are going to be uploaded. But there will be a range of revision materials to use at home. A part of that first exam, it's only worth 5 marks, but actually 5 marks could be the difference between a B and a C, an A and an A star. And one of those elements is a proofreading and editing question. You'll see an example on your screen now from a previous exam paper. We have a full booklet of about 50 different tasks that your child can attempt at home. So maybe it might be a Sunday morning before a run, or just in the evening they've got in and they don't want to attempt too much revision. They can access maybe a quick little task like this just to revise and just go over those sort of proofreading and editing skills that they need for the exam. We will also be providing revision booklets for Unit 2 and Unit 3. You don't need to go out and purchase anything. All of the different types of questions, writing types and tips will be there. And again, these will be available on Google Classroom, but I will also be printing hard copies of these for you to access in reception for those students who actually prefer to use a highlighter and a pen and work at a desk. And I will let you know when these are available. I mentioned earlier that spelling, punctuation and grammar is a key element of the writing in both of the exam papers, and something some of our students do lack confidence in. But again, we'll be providing some revision materials just to help students upskill themselves. Your child will have regular assessments and lessons, and it will be a focus for the teacher's marking. So it will be really obvious to your child which areas they need to work on, whether that's spelling, whether that's punctuation. So you'll be able to see that clearly in your child's book if they bring them home. Just a couple of tips really, as well as all of those revision materials that you'll find on Google Classroom. BBC Bite Size is an excellent resource. You'll see there on your screens, there's everything from spelling, punctuation and grammar tips, to all of those types of reading and writing questions that your child will see when they sit that exam. Google Classroom, all our children should be really used to using this by now, but every single type of question, revision material will be available to your child on their Google Classroom for English. But not only that, there'll be lots of helpful revision support videos as well. They'll be by your teachers, your child's teacher, myself, just for them to watch in an evening. They'll be about 5 to 10 minutes long, not too long. Again, just in case your child maybe lacks a bit of confidence in one of those key skills, there'll be something for them to access just to give them that boost. And just before I leave you, just some tips on how to support your child. Just encourage them to go on Google Classroom, access those revision materials. Let us know if there's any problems, if you would prefer a printed handout, or if you can't access any of those videos. And just to encourage your child to attend some revision sessions. They're not provided yet, but we will inform you in due course about when your child can access them face-to-face after school or half-term revision. Thank you very much, and I'm going to hand over now to Mr. Tippings, Head of Maths.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mr. Tippings, Head of Maths Department. It's nice to speak to you all for the first time, and just as Ms. Clinton said, I want to say a big thank you to start off with for all the efforts that you put in with your children in the summer, for them completing the mathematics and numeracy through the CDG process, which wasn't easy for them, and the work that they did to get the grades that they are now does really need to be commended. However, the focus now needs to switch to the mathematics examination, which is going to be the focus for Year 11. So the maths exam will consist of 2 papers, paper 1, which is a non-calculated paper, and paper 2, which is a calculated paper. Now these will take place in May or June next year. The exact dates haven't been confirmed yet, but they're going to be in the summer exam season. And an important point to make is that the cumulative scores that will determine the learner's grade. So they may come home and say, oh, I've sat my maths paper, but they've got to sit in 2 maths papers. So make sure you're keeping on top of them, but they're still on top of our revision so that they're ready and prepared for the second paper. Unlike English, we have 3 tiers in maths: higher, intermediate, and foundation, and that can severely affect a pupil's chances of getting the grade that they want or need. So the higher tier exam, the learners can access anything between an A star and a C, and anything less than a C, the learner is awarded a U grade. For the intermediate tier, the learners can access any grade between B and E, and anything less than an E, the learner is awarded a U grade. And then for the foundation tier, we've got between D and G again. Anything less than a U is a G grade. So we need to be really sure in maths that we are entering each learner at the best tier possible for them, to give them the best chance of getting the best possible grade. So at the moment, these, depending on what the classes are, these are provisional tiers of entry. However, we want the learners, as I said, to access the highest tier possible, and this will be an informed decision throughout the year based on the assessments that the learners will sit, as Mr. Lewis alluded to earlier on. So we will use the evidence gathered, which will be provided by the learners, in order for us to make an informed decision as to what tier they will be entered in for in the summer. So how are the learners being prepared from a mathematics point of view? So we've highlighted key topics through analysis of past papers, to make sure that any big hitting topics, so the ones that regularly occur, are being covered first in our schemes of learning, and therefore giving the learners the best possible chance of answering the most questions in the exam. Every learner will have a mini assessment every fortnight, and that is made up of past paper questions, testing the recent material covered in class. Now Year 11 has just started to undertake these this week, whether they might have had some today, tomorrow. So keep on top of your children and make sure that they're revising for those, and just show a general interest in them. And also, as a department, we're providing them opportunities to close the gap in their learning. So they will complete the half hour in class of the mini assessment. The teacher will model the perfect answer. The teacher then takes that test in, looks at any common errors across the class, and then within a week of that happening, learners have the opportunity to improve on their learning and to close that gap in specified dirt time during lessons. And as Mr. Lewis said, there are 4 key assessments throughout the year, and specific revision resources will be provided by a Google Classroom and MathsWatch. I just want to talk to you a little bit more about Google Classroom now. So pupils can log in with their hub details. and you need to check that they have that. If not, they need to go and get it off a form tutor or see their maths teacher for that. Then in their Google Classroom, they need to go under the classwork tab, and we've created a specific topic called revision lists. And then in the October assessment revision list, the learners come to something which look like this. So these assessment lists will be ready-made for each assessment. So it's not just one which applies to them all each year. This one is called the October one. So for that October assessment in class, this is what will go live to learners next week. There is a video on there which has been made by members of the Maths Department in Cwmbran High, so they are specific to the strategies that we are teaching the learners and not just a generic one. They have GCSE practice questions and then answers. So how I would expect a learner to be revising in maths is they watch the video, they make relevant notes, they try the questions and any they're stuck on, they go back to the video to see an example which will help them, they try it again, and then they check their final question against the answers. So what can you do as a parent to support them? Ensure that they're fully equipped for lessons, so that the learners have got a black pen, a red pen, a ruler, a calculator and a highlighter. That is our minimum expectation as a mathematics department they come to lesson with. Show an interest in their assessment scores, both in the larger assessments but also in those fortnightly mini assessments, to ensure that the learners are revising for those and are being kept on track. And also please feel free to watch the videos yourselves in order to upskill yourself if needed to help your child at home. And finally, for me, what this evening about and what this year is about is ensure that the teacher, the learner and their support network at home work together in order to achieve success at the end of year 11. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm now going to pass you on to Mrs. Lloyd, the Head of Science.
Hello, good evening. I'm Joanne Lloyd. I'm Head of Science. I'm going to just talk through you the structure of the different science pathways that we offer this evening for your child. There's a slight change in that the year 10 courses are different now as there were no exams sat in year 10. So I'll just explain the structure, what remains now for your child in year 11. So we run 3 different pathways in science. There's triple science, where at the end of this year then your child will receive 3 grades, 1 for biology, 1 for chemistry, 1 for physics. Double science, where there are 2 grades at the end of year 11, and double applied GCSE, where there are also 2 grades at the end of year 11. They're just slightly different in their content, and they're slightly different in how they're examined. At the moment, your child's been in more or less the same group for the year 10 into year 11. We are going to look and make any amendments that are needed in this half term, just to ensure that every child is in the right place for their ability, and to make sure they're on the right pathway for the highest achievement possible for them. Now, the sets that they're in are based on class assessment. We're going to have class assessment within this half term, so it is important that your child at home is reviewing the information that's been covered in lessons, so that they're able to prepare appropriately for the forthcoming assessments that we have. As it says there, all pathways offer foundation and higher tier. The tier that we would place your child into is based on their performance in class assessments and end of topic tests. Now, as you can see there, for the higher tier, only children that are secure in C grade and above, we will enter for that tier, so that we don't get children dropping off from a D grade then into a U. So there is no scale below a D. We'll discuss this with your child and with you again at parents' evening, so your child will be aware of what tier they're in. Within all of the science pathways, we can mix and match the tiers. So if your child has a strength in physics and the weakness is biology, they can sit higher physics and foundation biology, and then that then is tallied in by the exam board at the end with the scores that they've achieved. Now, the year 10, usually what would happen is children in triple and double science would have sat 6 exams over the 2-year period. Now, because of COVID, the year 10 exams were cancelled altogether, so there is no carrying over of the content from year 10. Your child will only be examined on the content from year 11. Now, because of that, what it means is that the exams that, this is the triple class, I'll explain the other pathways in a moment. What it means is that the weighting then for the year 11 exam is 100%. So the biology exam, which at the moment is set for the 17th of May, it's only provisional, which is why we haven't published the dates onto the PowerPoint. The score from that exam, the weighting will be 100%, whereas previously what would happen is 45% of the mark would come from year 10, 45% of the grade would come from year 11 with a practical component as well for the final 10%. So it is based just on the one exam in the summer. Now for the triple science classes, there are 2 booklets per science. So for biology, there'll be 2 booklets. Everything that they will need for their exam is within those 2 booklets. We also provide revision booklets, and we provide revision resources from Bangor University to accompany the WJC. Now the revision guides we will give out about Easter time. They are available before that, but we tend to find that they're more useful once the whole course has been covered, only because the booklets that we use in class do cover the entire content anyway. Now for the double award science, there are 3 exams. So again, biology, chemistry, physics, they're slightly shorter, and that just allows for the slight reduction in the amount of content that is covered. Because there's a slight reduction in the content, that is why two grades are given at the end of year 11. Now for that, there is 1 booklet per science. So there's 1 biology, 1 chemistry, 1 physics, and again that covers all of the content that they will need for the exams in the summer. Now this time it's slightly different. So if a child has a strength in one science, physics for example, and a weakness in biology, that those courses are added together to give the overall grade. So if there is a weakness in one of the sciences, we will pick that up and we will put your child into intervention to ensure that they haven't got one science which is pulling down the other 2 for their overall grading. Okay, now double applied science is a different structure course altogether. So what would have happened for double applied science is they would have sat 2 exams in year 10. Again, those exams were not carried out because of the COVID pandemic. So instead, again, none of the content from year 10 will be examined on. So the applied science classes only have 1 exam in year 11. That 1 exam will cover all 3 sciences. There's a mixture of biology, chemistry and physics within that exam. And then they will have a task-based assessment, which is a little bit like a coursework carried out in an exam paper. That will be carried out in class because it has a practical component, so we will carry it out in the labs in school, and it will be carried out with their class teacher, and that is in January. So we have a window that needs to be completed. It's not one set date. And the size of the task-based assessment means that it's carried out over 3 lessons or so. If your child is away, what we can do is we can catch up. It's slightly different to an exam. Now that will provide 20% of their overall grade weighting, and then the remaining 80% then will be carried out then in that paper with the biology, chemistry and physics in the summer. Okay. Now in class we do teach by booklet. All of the booklets are available on Google Classroom, so your child can keep their class booklet in class, but if they want to go home and review any information that we've covered in class, the booklets are on Google Classroom, exactly the same. They're on a PDF, so they can scroll through to look at the questions that were covered today, for example, and they can have a little review over in the evening. But within the classroom structure, we do have lots of past paper practice. We carry a lot of modelling of those questions, looking at the command language, looking at the types of questions that would come up in the exam. They're all past papers. We do a lot of I do, we do, you do, so that each child can look that they understand the information first of all. We model through together, we go through questioning together before they try their own. So it gives us a lot of time to assess how the children are doing. It gives a lot of self-assessment opportunity for your child, so they will know how they were doing. They will know if they're understanding the topics as we go through. But what it also means is we're able to address any misconceptions as we go through and prior to our end of topic tests. Now, within a normal classroom lesson, we will often take in the odd marks from the odd past paper. We don't use those for anything apart from for ourselves to check that children are making the right progress in each lesson. But for the end of topic test information, we will use that in order for the progress check information to let you know what grade we're predicting as a progress check. If in the event of us having to move away from exams because of COVID and going back to a centre determined grade approach, we will use the end of topic test data and the grading from the end of topic test in order to provide a centre determined grade for your child. I have spoken to all of the classes about this, but it's really important that they do prepare well for the end of topic tests, because in the event of no exam, we will be using that information to provide or to determine their best fit grade. So at home, there are 3 different Google Classrooms, one for each of the different pathways that we offer. Your child will have the codes for those classrooms, and within each classroom then there is a subsection. I've only fit the two on the screen there. There's a subsection for biology, chemistry and physics. What we will be doing, it'll be going live from Monday, but there will be, so for each fortnight we will update the information that we're covering in class. So if your child is off for any reason, any information that they've missed in class for that fortnight will be on Google Classroom in advance. But it also means there are quizzes, there are little tests, there's BBC bite-sized links. So for all of the topics, BBC bite-size off a little mini test which are marked for them, so your child's able to self-assess at home. All of the booklets are on there, as I've said. So if your child is at home for any reason, the same booklet that we are using in class will be on Google Classroom. And those Bangor University revision guides, which are WJC specific, they will be on there also. As I said, we will give those out as hard copies more towards Easter time, when we know for sure that the provisional grades are confirmed dates. The provisional exam dates are confirmed dates. So the topic lists are on there, so whether your child is in triple, double or applied science, they will know what content they are covering. And then for all of that content then there's a variety of quizzes, YouTube clips and so on, as it says there. So past paper questions, modelling of how to carry out those past paper questions and it's achieved success in the long structured answers, for example. If there are any questions, staff are available before and after school, and they're more than happy to help any child that wants to come in and ask for any information or any further guidance on any topics. And we are very approachable, so by all means pop in and see us. Again, if it's easier, you can contact myself or Mr. Chapman, head of year, for any information. He will forward any queries on to me. If we can help in any way we can, please let us know. We're always happy to help. So I will pass on now to Mr. Chapman, and he will discuss head of year information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it is lovely to be speaking to you this evening. As Mrs. Gill said, it's a shame we can't meet in person in the hall, but I think this is the second best option, if you like. The first thing I'd like to say is that we are delighted with how the majority of our Year 11s have settled back into school, into Year 11, okay, and getting them back into normal lessons, 5 lessons a day, and into those routines has gone very well. Our 3 main aims for Year 11, and I've made these clear in assemblies, and the tutors as well, I'll be making those clear, is to get them back in school safe and well, and then of course importantly getting them engaged in all their lessons and in their learning. The reason we do this is we want all our pupils to get the best qualifications they possibly can, and then to move on to whatever their future holds, whether it's college, an apprenticeship or employment. So they'll get sick and tired of phrases from me and others, things like do the right thing in the right place at the right time, and me saying, for goodness sake, I don't want any of you to be a NEET, which is a horrible acronym meaning not in education, employment and training. And I'm sure none of us want that for any of our pupils or your children. The image on the screen at the moment, I'm sure you're all very, very familiar with, and the number of times you've probably heard the word, oh, I'm stressed and all this kind of stuff, is is something that you probably experience on a daily basis. And so I kind of with you on that one and know what we're going through. And too much stress is a bad thing. But I'd just like to emphasize that it's important that, some stress is actually positive and actually makes us perform well. The image on the screen at the minute, if you look at Sector 1, where a pupil's going through virtually no stress, I'd worry about a pupil in that sector, because they're the ones that are so laid back, they don't seem to have a care in the world, there's no drive or anything there, and obviously they will not perform to their best. If we go into Sector 2, that then is where there is enough stress for them to, and enough pressure, but not too much for them to perform well, and they're getting the adrenaline and so forth, and that is the optimum sector to be in. If, however, the pupil gets a little bit overstressed, they might get tired. I'm sure we're all familiar with ratty teenagers answering back and things like that, and we don't want to go over to that. But then Sector 4 is where actually the pupil is so stressed that actually they fail to perform at all, and they totally break down. The problem is that every child has a different threshold, and our job both as teachers and as the support network at home, is to try and keep them in that second area, and so that they don't become over anxious. I've pitched these lists from the NHS, and I put the link up on the display as well. And these are just things that you can do. Obviously, keep an eye on your child. Watch out for any signs of stress. Is the obvious first one. But then secondly, make sure they eat well, and please avoid the energy drinks, these monsters and so forth, which really don't do any good whatsoever. A good sleep pattern. It doesn't necessarily need to be a particular time of sleep, but they've got a decent sleep pattern. Whatever suits your child is really important. If you are aware that your child has exams or assessments coming up, and they've got other commitments, maybe it might be an idea to help at that time to take some of the other pressures off in order that they can focus on their assessments. Help them study, which I'll come back to in a minute, and my colleagues have already mentioned some specific things for their subjects. Talk to them about their nerves is really important, as is getting out and about and doing some exercise. I don't mean they have to do a massive session down the gym. It could be just taking the dog for a walk, getting out of the house, getting a bit of fresh air is actually very, very important. Try not to add to any pressure, and at the end there, make time for some just little treats and what have you. Big ones to avoid. I've already mentioned energy drinks. And I think all of these are probably the bane of our lives. Mobile phones, we know that pupils are kind of glued to their mobile phones, but if you can agree with them that if they're going to study for a set period in the evening, put the phone aside, switch it off so that there's no distraction from social media and so forth. And then gaming, again, some of our children are gaming until 3 o'clock in the morning. It's obviously not a good idea. And avoid screen time late at night and for the last half hour before they go to bed. It really helps the brain to sort of relax and absorb everything they need to absorb from the day's work. The other things you can do, some have already been mentioned. We start school at 8:35 a.m. There is no form time, no registration. Teachers take a register, and then we get on with teaching. And what pupils need to appreciate is that if they miss 5-6 minutes of that lesson, they've missed 10% of their teaching time. So it's so important that they're in their lessons on time. Other colleagues have already mentioned getting them organised, making sure they've got the right equipment for school. It's a good idea to have a timetable handy, stuck to the fridge, on your mobile phone, whatever it may be, so that if your child says, "Oh, Mum, I can't remember what lessons I got today," you have that timetable to hand. If you could try and provide space for them to work, it might not be that they might share a bedroom, there might not be a suitable space, but even if it's in the kitchen, if you can agree a time that is their time in the kitchen and we avoid distractions, that would be great. And obviously that would mean that you can actually spend some time with them going through their maths videos or whatever it may be. Show a genuine interest in your child's education. I know, having had 2 teenage sons myself, if you say how was school today, they'll just grunt back at you, all right, or whatever it might be. But if you can ask specific questions like, I don't know, if you know that they were struggling with a particular topic in science, say, did you go and see Mrs. Lloyd today? Did you check that out? How was it? And you'll find that very often said, oh yeah, I get it now. It was really good. So please make sure you try to ask specific questions and show a genuine interest there. Avoid booking a holiday. I know holidays have been restricted as a result of COVID and the prices have gone through the roof and things like that. But exams will run from May right the way through towards the end of June. But there are also assessments ongoing. And it's important that your children don't miss any of those assessments. They could be coursework, non-examined assessments. They could be the CDGs that Mr. Lewis has mentioned. And we need that evidence just in case any of the exams are cancelled in the future. And as I've already mentioned, keep praising and rewarding any success that your children may have. Just a quick one here about how the brain works. And if you spend an hour studying, this graph shows that we start off with all good intentions and our brain is performing very, very well. But our brain energy soon starts to dip. And then as we get towards the end of the hour, we think, oh, quick, I must finish this off. And actually our performance increases again. So this is where the theory of chunking comes in. You'll notice in this one, there are 2 peaks at the start and the end, but there's a big dip in the middle. If we split that into 3 20-minute chunks, this is the effect it has. So you'll notice now that there are 3 smaller dips, but more importantly, there are 6 peaks. And so all we've got here is 20 minutes of study, quick get up, stretch it, have a cup of tea, whatever it might be, and then do another 20 minutes, have a short break, and I mean a micro break, just 5 minutes, and then another 20-minute study period. You probably find that will be far more effective with your children. You know, they do have very, very short attention spans and move on to things very, very quickly. Other tips for revision planning, long term, is to have a revision timetable. As I've already said, break it into chunks. Get your children to condense their notes onto postcards or flashcards. It's always nice. A lot of pupils respond really well to pretty stationery and colours and things like that. And anything that you can do like that is an incentive to help study is great. By all means, go through Google Classroom with them, go through their class notes with them, and the revision booklets that have already been mentioned this evening as well. And if they have practice papers to do, it's a really good idea to actually help your child by saying, right, sit down, you've got half an hour to do this paper, and time them as if you were the invigilator. It's very, very helpful and gets them into good habits for the exams. I will go through a lot of the study skills with the tutors and with the pupils in assembly times and form periods over the course of the next few weeks. But the sort of things we go through is how to take effective notes, just writing down keywords, key facts, organising the work, using flashcards, little postcards, maybe having the topic on the back and then some keywords on the other side. And they can then put those into a pile of ones I know really well, ones I think I know, and ones I need more help with. And that is a very, very good way of using flashcards. And mind mapping. I'm a big fan of mind mapping, so it's a good idea if you can have a pile of A3 paper, and again, those pretty pens and pencils. It forces the pupil to put key ideas onto the page. The little doodles and things, they're not just there for fun. Because actually people remember that in the top right hand corner there's a picture of a guy on a bike that represents. It's great for things like characters in English and so forth. I know I've whizzed through that very, very quickly, but I will be doing that with your children. We have got a study guide booklet to give out to them as well. They've started really, really well. So again, it's about being positive. As has been said before, ask for advice. The best way of getting hold of me, because of my teaching commitments and so forth, is email, which is on the screen now. So I hope this evening has been informative for you. I know there have been a few questions in the chat. We're not going to answer those now because we need to just go through those questions, and we will get back to you regarding those questions into the chat. I'll now hand over to Mrs. Gill. And I hope you found this evening informative. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman, and thank you everybody else, and thank you parents and pupils for your time tonight. I do hope that you found it of use. Obviously, there has been a lot of information that you've been provided with. As I've already mentioned, this presentation tonight will be put on the school website, so you're able to go back, particularly those presentations where there's been perhaps recommendations for books and different websites and email addresses that you'll want to refer back to. I'm very mindful of the wealth of information that you've been provided. I'm also mindful of the fact that it's been the 3 core subjects that have talked tonight, and obviously your child is sitting more subjects, more exams than just those 3 core. And I think it really gives a sense actually of how potentially overwhelming this could be for your child. So what is really important now is that this year is suitably paced, and in order to do that, it's important that your child misses as little time in school as possible, that they're in lessons on time and learning. And in order to support that, we have changed some of our rules and routines in the school. As you'll know, there's been a change in COVID guidance due to the being in level 0 and a low risk in Wales at the moment. And as such, we've moved from the 3 sessions that we ran last year to 5 one-hour lessons. This ensures that lessons have pace and that pupils are able to cover all the subject content that they need to. But what is important is that we all have high expectations of your children, including them themselves. And so what I have said to staff is when children are in lessons, I expect their phones to be switched off and put in their bags. If children do have their phones out in lesson without permission, they will be taken away from them. I've also said, and I know that Mr. Chapman has mentioned this, energy drinks are not appropriate for children. They're not to be sold to children under 16, and as a result, we ask for them not to be brought into school. If your child is found with an energy drink, that will be confiscated from them. Also, because we've moved to 1-hour lessons, there is now no need for children to go to the toilet during the lesson time. We find that that is just too disruptive. Quite often what we've found in the past is that if children ask to go to the toilet, quite often it can be to meet up with their friends. All of this will disrupt their learning. So we're saying that children, because lessons are now only 1 hour, they are not to go to the toilet. There will be plenty of opportunity for your child to go to the toilet during the change of lessons and at break and lunchtime. And finally, we expect, as I said before, your child to be on time for lesson. If children are late for lessons more than 3 times in a week, then they will be issued with a detention and a sanction for that, because it's really important that your child is in lessons for the maximum time possible, able to learn. So I know that I have your support with that and those rules that we have implemented. I'm sure that I know this year will be busy, but I think it will be very successful. Last year's Year 11, despite a lot of disruption, secured some very strong outcomes, and I'm equally confident that your child will this year. However, it will take hard work and determination and resilience from all of us, but most importantly, your child. So thank you for your time tonight. It has been lovely to be able to have this event with you. Unfortunately, I wish it was face-to-face, but hopefully it will be one time in the future we'll be able to see each other face-to-face. Please, if you do have any questions, and I can see a couple in the chat, as Mr. Chapman has said, we will answer those. Anything else that maybe comes to light later on, please send an email over to the school. Thank you for your time and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.